Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Next Level Refs. Tonight, you've got Greeny and I, and we're going to have a look at a clip and talk through some of the aspects of this clip. It's a bit of a mass confrontation clip that was sent in to us on our socials from earlier in the year. We finally had an opportunity to review it, and we thought it was a good one to chat through tonight. Greeny, we've probably both had plenty of mass confrontations in our time, so not a bad clip to run through.
Yeah, absolutely, Beathy. I think it's something that every match official at some time or other will experience. Hopefully, not too many, but certainly had a few in my time, as I'm sure you did.
Try and avoid them.
Let's have a look. It's an interesting one.
We'll jump straight in. All right, so we'll let it play through once and then we'll offer some insights after we drag it back a little bit. So here we go. It is an A-League game from much earlier in the season, Melbourne City versus Central Coast. And we'll see it knock around before we've got the clip.
Yeah, so we can see the build-up here from Central Coast. They're playing that possession, trying to work their way out of their own half. Good recovery from Melbourne City, who won the ball back, and then Central Coast not too happy, and that player's come in with a lunging tackle, didn't look too great, and now this is the result. Player on the ground and a bit of a melee. All right, well let's go back and break it down, because as we said, this is something that happens for everyone. So I think that's the tackle. Clearly a reckless tackle. So as we were talking about, Central Coast trying to play that possession game, working the ball out of their own half of the field. You can see Melbourne City pressing quite heavily. A lot of players, very congested midfield now. And now this is the point in time where Central Coast lose that possession. And you can see the player who lost that possession is the one who ultimately comes back and makes that tackle. So you can imagine that there's some frustration there, obviously, from the Central Coast player, having lost possession of the ball, slipped over. And now he's trying to make amends. Probably not in the right way.
Yeah, you're right, mate. And correct. That's a really big giveaway, right? Like, he had possession, he's lost possession, and now he's trying to get it back quickly. And even before we jump into breaking down this little management episode, probably the first thing that jumps out at me is the time of the match. So I don't know how many incidents you had in your career over like many games where you had incidents that appear like really late in the half. I think that's probably the first thing that I can see.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think it's that danger period, isn't it? Right before half time.
Absolutely.
The score's 1-0, so it's really close. And like we've just ticked over that 45-minute mark, and now all of a sudden we're in additional time, and now we've got to deal with this scenario.
For sure.
So I think if we start with the tackle itself, I don't think there's any doubt that it's a reckless tackle. It's not pretty.
Agree.
The Central Coast players lunged in, and his trailing leg has made contact with the Melbourne City player who's down rolling around on the ground. If we look at the referee's position at the time of the actual tackle itself, I think it was quite good. He had quite a good view of the incident itself.
Yep.
So he's doing well here. He's moving around. He's getting his angles. He's on his toes. He's ready to make an adjustment. And here, when that tackle occurs, he's in a fantastic position. He's not blocked by any of the other players.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. So cracking position. You've got the assistant referee on the other side of the field who's probably got a reasonable angle on it, perhaps, maybe being blocked by that Central Coast player at the back. But yeah, absolutely. So perfect position, quick on the whistle, which was great. So identified that foul nice and early, blown the whistle nice and quick. You can see his hand even goes down to his right hand pocket.
Right.
So I'd say gut feel, as we talk about as a referee, gut feel has probably said to him, "Oh, that wasn't too good. Probably worthy of a caution." But now that we've got players running in, he's backed away from that sanction. So now we've got a bit of a problem. We've got the Melbourne City players coming in, who felt now aggrieved, protecting their playmaker, who's now riding around on the ground like he's been run over. And I think it's important as match officials too that and we've spoken about this in previous sessions, haven't we, about understanding, and it's not always easy at the grassroots level, at the community level. We don't always know the players that well, but understanding which players could potentially cause us problems in situations like this. And I think referees at this level would certainly understand that that Nathaniel Atkinson from Melbourne City is always going to come in and protect his own teammates when he's he's felt aggrieved. So as is Kyle Trewin, who's the other two central defenders, always going to come in and protect their team. And when you've got that, and as you can see when we roll it through, they quickly isolate that offending player from Central Coast and drag him away. They're not happy.
Yep.
And then that just invites, Central Coast players to come in, and obviously they don't want to leave their own teammate isolated. So that's when we end up in a situation like this. And the referee again, he's nice and close. He's probably doing his best, but I think, and I don't know about you, Beathy, but I think once it's like that, it's pretty far gone. You're not going to be too much. Do too much, good pulling and dragging players when you've got, a group of about 10 players around a situation. So,
yeah, mate, I totally agree with that. I know what you're alluding to with that early caution as well. So we could see the ref, and I totally agree with your analysis on his positioning. That was absolutely textbook. He's got a great angle, great view, saw it really clearly. And it looked to me like his gut reaction was to get that card out nice and quick. Maybe seeing players rush in, he's opted not to do that. I know from my experience, often the early yellow card out of the pocket can kind of take some of the heat out of it. And personally, I would have loved to have seen that yellow card out nice and early. It may well have still led to a melee because that tackle did come through with some intensity. It was over the ball. Fortunately, no contact with that first leg. But tackles like that are always going to get a reaction. So it may not have prevented the whole thing, but certainly would have at least given the impression to all the players that the tackle is being sanctioned with a yellow, and that's something we don't need to worry about anymore. And now we've just got the carry on afterwards. I find with these situations, you kind of got to either make that split-second decision to get in there nice and early and try and get almost in between the players, or as the ref did in the end, kind of stand back and watch. And I think as you're coming through the ranks, maybe the stand back approach when we've got a melee is probably much more sensible. That it only comes with experience when you can get in there nice and quick and use your presence and your body language to try and prevent this situation from escalating even further. I think we did see with the ref eventually probably realised that he couldn't get in there, and ultimately did back out to get that really wide view. And then we saw the beginning of the outcome of this entire melee as the ref was going over to talk to his team. So that's my take on that part of the clip.
Yeah, spot on, mate. Spot on. And yeah, I think you're right. And I think we did see the assistant referee, on that far side, make a little movement to come in. So yeah, certainly I think that's a good point about your team coming in and supporting you and just having a different angle, particularly when you've got so many players involved at one time there. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then I think if we talk about, so I think that the melee kind of sorts itself out in the end.
Yep.
Players probably realise they're actually on live TV, so they can't do too much more than what they've done there. So, I think if we have a look now at how the referee then manages the offending players, so he's had a quick chat, as we saw, to his assistant referee, obviously to clarify, who's involved and who he needs to sanction further. So he's calling out the offending player, I think, from Central Coast. I think is the one who he sanctions first.
Yeah, we've just missed that in the clip, but you're right. He does identify the main offender first, and I quite like that, so that everyone knows that eventually we've got the offending player to begin with, and now we can see him calling out the other two players that the ref obviously feels responsible for instigating the melee, one from each team, which is a fairly common sense approach. But yeah, I've certainly got opinion on bringing those two players together. How about yourself, Greeny?
Yeah, and I think, I think we certainly would. I think we're going to agree on this. But I think bringing the two offending players who've just been involved in a push and shove and a bit of an incident, such as we just saw, bringing them out together is probably not ideal. I think we've spoken about this on other occasions. I think isolating each of the players and dealing with them separately, I think, is a better way to go. It just avoids any further confrontation between the two players, that you don't give them an opportunity to carry on and even verbally carry on with each other. So I think that's just probably a better way of managing it. And I think from memory there was an incident earlier in the match where the referee dealt with two players who'd come together in a similar fashion, and it just invited them to continue the argument and continue the situation further than it probably needed to.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I totally agree. Bringing two players that were already at each other back together is potentially inviting trouble. Fortunately, nothing came of it this time, but it certainly invites the opportunity for like second yellow cards or even for the melee to escalate again. But I thought I'd just run through this clip again, conscious of time. We're trying to keep these short and sharp. Any final messages as we roll through it one more time?
No, look, I think there's some really good points from the referee. He's done a good job, as we said, with his positioning. Quick whistle, he's got in there nice and quick. So I think all big ticks for that. And as we just discussed, a few little improvements just to manage that melee at the end. And then I think again, we spoke about it early on. So the timing of this incident right before half time. And again, I think we've spoken about this previously, is that pick a good time now to end that first half. Don't end it when it's tempers are still high and players are still thinking about that whole confrontation and that whole situation, because in about 1.5 minutes time they're all going to be walking up the tunnel together, as well as coaches and other officials who are probably also going just as ballistic on the sideline at the moment as well with the fourth official. So pick a good time. Try to take a bit of air out of that balloon, so to speak, before the halftime break, and then hopefully no more issues.
Yeah, love that, and I think that is such a good way to end this session. We've got a fairly decent melee right on the stroke of halftime. There's every chance that this is going to continue down the tunnel. And what we don't want to have happen is that we're ending the game to give the players the perfect opportunity to go at each other again. So I think having a common sense ending to this half and making sure that your team is very aware that something could kick off again. So that's, AR1 on the bench side, if you're lucky enough to have a fourth official, that they're on their toes, anticipating that something could continue after the halftime whistle in this particular circumstance. So a good clip. Thank you very much for that. I won't mention names, but the person that sent that through on the socials, it was great to see this clip and others that have come through, and hopefully we'll be able to do many more sessions like these. If you do come across clips on the A-League, on overseas leagues, or even down at our grassroots level, please feel free to send them through. We'd love to share our insight and hopefully pass on some of our experience on how we manage this and other types of situations. Greeny, anything from your side, or we're happy to sign off?
No, all good. Look forward to the next session.
Awesome. Cheers. See you, mate.
Thanks.